we want, in a perfect world, one of us to stay at home and be with the kids. So what does that mean? We have to design a life where we can get by on one of our incomes and still save money. And albeit you're not going to save 90% of your income, right? When you only have your income's cut in half, that's not possible. But that wasn't the goal. It's what are you optimizing for, right? So we were optimizing for, is this possible? Could we still save a little bit of money? Could we still save for retirement? Could we still save for travel?
Yeah! What's up, everybody? Your life alchemist, your dragon. Welcome to Alchemize Life. I'm your host, Justin David Carl. This is a show where I seek out and share expertise, wisdom, and thought leadership in all domains with the mission of empowering and inspiring you to proactively design and truly live a life worth living. We're all in this together, and when we do the work together, we go so much farther, so much faster, and have so much more fun. Without further ado, let's dig into this episode and alchemize life. Brad Barrett, oh my, so good to finally have you on the show, brother. How are you
Justin,
doing?
I am doing quite well. This should be fun. Looking forward to chatting with you. It's been a couple years, sadly. Obviously, we've exchanged some Facebook messages here and there, but it's been a couple years since I've seen your face, so this is cool.
Yeah, I believe the last time we connected like face to face, at least virtually, was during 2020, shortly after the pandemic, because I've been, hosting a money mastermind that met every month for years. And when the pandemic hit, we went virtual. And in one way, it kind of sucked because we used to meet in person, and that was so wonderful to meet up with other like financial independence minded people. But the one huge benefit of taking it online was that I was able to have people like you come be a guest speaker, which I would have never expected. And that kind of like started to launch like my the pre-work to my podcasting career. So, that was back in 2020, and I'm so excited to connect with you today.
Yeah, it should be fun. And that was pretty wild too. To your point, I'm not going to fly out to the Bay Area, right, for an hour-long meeting, but to meet up. I mean, there were a ton of people on that call, which was great. And that was,
I think we had like 40 or 50 people there. And
it was funny because I really have done a lot of those over the last handful of years, but it was super intense because it just seemed like the level of questions and kind of the intellect of our friends in the Bay Area. It was just like the next level. I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm prepared for this. I'm just here for like a meet and greet. But no, jokes aside, it was awesome. And but yeah, really, really high level thinkers for sure.
Yeah, I may at some point put that because I have that recording. I may put it up on my podcast just because it was so good, and it was so much fun, and you brought so much value.
Nice.
So
cool.
Massive thank you for doing that. And, just to introduce you to the audience, because, I'm in the beginning of my podcasting career, so I do the introduction within the recording because I haven't got to the level where I do the introduction outside of the recording and then the production team puts it together. So Brad Barrett is the co-founder and co-host of Choose FI, which is the largest financial independence podcast. It gets over 1 million downloads a month. And Brad personally achieved financial independence at 35. He's a recovering financial accountant. I think he's recovered by now, but we might get into that. And Brad and his co-host Jonathan of the Choose FI podcast played a massive, massive role in my own FI journey. It was part of my weekly and daily self-education around FI to listen to every single episode that you guys produce, and it gave me the energy, the ideas, the inspiration, and so much empowerment to achieve FI in my own life. So I just want to say, huge thank you for all the work that you and Jonathan have done, since 2017, I believe.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you being part of the community, being such an important part of the community also, right? Like leading the group out in the Bay Area. It really is, as we call it, like a crowdsourced show. It's a crowdsourced community. It's a community. It's not just me and Jonathan. But the funny thing, actually, with the name of your podcast, is Alchemize Life, is I've always kind of thought there was some weird alchemy. Truly, that is the word that I use, between me and Jonathan. Like, it's this hard to describe, right? Like, wacky thing that, like, we are the polar opposite people in almost every possible way. But yet there's something about the way that we can communicate that really almost emboldens people to believe, A, this is possible, that they could do this in their own lives, and B, to take action, right? Because it's so easy to take in content, whatever type of content that may be, and certainly podcasting being amongst them, and just passively listen, right? It's entertainment. But to us, that would have always been a failure. It would have been a waste of time. I mean, frankly, like you said, I've reached financial independence. I'm not like a deca millionaire or anything like that, but I don't need to work for money at this point. So for me to put my heart and soul into a podcast for 6 years just for shits and giggles, in essence, right? Like, made no sense. It was, are we actually affecting change? And are we somehow giving people the motivation to get up off their couch and take action to make their lives better? And for whatever weird alchemy, again, and I kid you not, Justin, that is the word I use in my own head. It works.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was literally, as part of my preparation for this, I was listening to episode 392 on your show, Beginning of a New Era, and you literally used the word alchemy. And that is like such an important word in my own life, because I consider myself a life alchemist. And that's why I named my podcast and my blog Alchemize Life, because for me, it's all about taking action. So alchemize is like the verb, the action form of the word alchemy. So like, I heard that, I was listening to it this morning, and I was like, oh, I'm so excited to talk with Brad.
Hey, let me just jump in. Actually, you're going to love this. Further double down. Sorry for the audience for a sidebar, but one of my early companies, which I've formed with a buddy of mine, which never went anywhere, but it was Digital Alchemist LLC. I kid you not. So
I love
which is
that.
why I figured you'd appreciate that. Sorry for the sidebar, but it's pretty cool.
Oh no, that's great. Yeah. Well, in terms of your aspirations to make an impact on other people's lives with the work that you do at Choose FI, like, for sure you did it in my life, because when I first started listening to Choose FI, I had about $80,000 in debt. I was like 6 years behind on my taxes. My credit was terrible. And I was just starting to clean my like money stuff up. And, because of the incredible, education that you provided, and also some luck, and being in the Bay Area, I went from negative $80K to financially independent, like millionaire, in 2 years.
2 years. Damn.
2 years.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So there's some luck in there. We had a really good stock market. I really optimized for earning as much money as possible. But like, I would have never even known that was possible if it wasn't for your podcast. So I just want to like really give credit where credit is due, because you guys played a massive role in my journey.
That is amazing.
So, yeah.
I mean, dude, that's incredible. And I think a couple of things you touch on there are really important. Like, what's possible, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that is actually one of the most important things that the financial independence community does, is we take something that seems either nebulous or virtually impossible, or so we've been led to believe, which is retiring or reaching a point of financial independence, because you hear the drumbeat of negativity from the Susie Ormans of the world, right? That's just that. For some reason, negativity gets clicks, which really is unfortunate. But you hear, right? Like, you hear her say, hey, you need $10 million to retire. You need $15 million to retire. Well, most people know, and genuinely know, that that's never going to happen for them. That's 95
Yeah.
plus percent of people at minimum, right? Well, what do you do when something is impossible? You give up, you throw your hands up, and you just YOLO the hell
You
out of it.
don't even
right?
try.
You don't even
Yep.
try.
Yeah.
So whereas if the onus is on you, or the level of control is on you, in that financial independence is a simple equation. And I don't know if we want to get into, I'm not going to do that.
No, I want to actually get into it because, financial independence is something I've talked about a few times on my show, but I'd like to kind of hear, like, how do you define financial independence?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, and it's funny because, as you said, I am a recovering CPA, but at this point, I don't think of it as the nuts and bolts of money, like the boring, like, I don't know, poring over Excel spreadsheets. Like, to me, that's 5% of the journey of financial independence. But so lest anybody think you need to be a math major or a CPA to do this, like, that is so far from the truth. It's like preposterous. So what actually matters is being intentional. And what actually matters is, like you said, it's getting kind of both sides right. It's locking in what actually you value in life, right? So I don't think that, at least the way that we conceptualize FI, that it is about deprivation at all. It's about living an intentional life, right? And that said, you obviously can't spend an unlimited amount of money unless by some chance you're, Bezos or Elon Musk or something. But joking aside, if you're intentional about your expenses and you're then optimizing your income, you can create a gap, right? And if you're saving that gap and you're investing it, I mean, we like just very simple investments, which have proven to be, over the long run, the highest likelihood of success. So I think in like probabilities of, like, hey, could I spend 10,000 hours trying to learn the ins and outs of the stock market and maybe be the next Warren Buffett? Well, I mean, maybe, but it's probably 1 in a billion. But could I match the stock market over 50 years by investing in low-cost index funds and at the same time outperforming 95% of people on Wall Street? That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. So, like, low-cost index funds are how I invest the majority of my money. And I mean, really, again, it's a simple math equation of, if you're saving, you can just look at, and I know you're a Mr. Money Mustache fan. He has an amazing article, and we'll link, I'm assuming you'll link this in the show notes, but it basically shows, like, if I save X percent of my money, let's say 50% of my income, I can reach financial independence in somewhere in the vicinity of 17 years. So, okay, well, 50% might be impossible for somebody, so maybe it's 30%. And then I don't have the exact years memorized, but then maybe it's 25 years. Well, 25 years is better than never, right? And if you're optimizing and you're raising your income, I suspect you're going to get there a lot quicker than that. But just since I did kind of gloss over maybe the actual definition, is, hey, what does my life cost? Okay, so there's no magic. There's no Susie Orman made up BS numbers. It's just, what does my life cost? And then I multiply that number, that annual expense figure, by a 25. And that gets us to a number that is kind of a rough back of the envelope financial independence figure. So really simply, if your life costs $40,000 a year, then you multiply by 25 and you get $1 million. Okay, same deal if you live in the Bay Area and your life costs $160,000 or something. You just multiply by 25 and you get 4 million. Okay, and anywhere in between or above or below that, it's fine. It's the same equation, and that kind of gets you to a point. So you take that, and Justin, obviously, the 4% rule of thumb, but for the audience, it's just the inverse of that, right? It's, you have this dollar figure. So let's say you have $1 million. You can reliably pull out 4% of that every single year. And it is indexed for normal inflation. So now this might have to be updated if we're in a period of significant inflation. But for normal 2-3% inflation, that is actually indexed for inflation. So it's not just, I can pull out 40 grand and 50 years from now, that's going to buy me a can of cat food, right? Like that doesn't really help anybody. But so, it's 40,000 and then whatever, 40,400 the next year, whatever it may be, right? And that theoretically should last you, if not in perpetuity, it's going to last you many, many decades. And again, obviously I'm a math person, but I don't get bogged down in the math, because the, we don't know what's going to happen in life, but when people smarter than me run Monte Carlo simulations and all these different possibilities, it pretty much between 3.25% withdrawal rate and a 4% withdrawal rate is going to get you success 99.9x% of the time. And, again, there could be a zombie apocalypse, but I'm not really accounting for that. That doesn't exactly make too much sense. So regardless, it is very directionally accurate, and it gets you to the point where, okay, this means I control it because it's what does my life cost? And I multiply by whatever, 25 or 33 if you want to be super conservative. So that's financial independence, the money side of financial independence in like a real quick nutshell.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. Today's show is brought to you by Veg Nutrition. Live better. So I'm actually a veg elite athlete, and before I joined the team, I spent months doing my due diligence to make sure that the company was vision, mission, and value aligned with me, my values, my mission, my vision, and my lifestyle. I got to know the owners super well. I even got to know the person who formulates all the products, and they passed with flying colors. So I couldn't be more excited to represent a company that I feel so aligned with. And I want to tell you about two of my favorite products. The first is the Veg Pre-Workout. So when I first went vegan, or mostly vegan, the last thing for me to go fully vegan was finding a vegan pre-workout that gave me the focus, the energy, and the power that I was looking for. And I can tell you, this is the best pre-workout that I've ever had. It gives me incredible focus and energy. And what's probably the best is it leaves me with no crash after I take it, which is great. And the flavors are so freaking good. There's literally peach mango and a Patriot Pop that tastes like, the firecracker popsicles, cherry lemon lime flavor. They're literally so good that I can dry scoop them. And they just released a watermelon flavor for just in time for summer, and it's incredible. So that's the first product. The second product is arguably also my favorite, and that's the plant protein. Comes in 3 incredible flavors: chocolate peanut butter, vanilla ice cream, and cold brew coffee. Yep, you heard me. Cold brew coffee flavor. It tastes incredible, all 3 flavors, 25 grams of protein, fully organic, incredible ingredients, heavy metal tested, and it is my go-to post-workout. Make sure that I'm recovering and refueling and giving my muscles the protein that they need to rebuild for that next workout. So go to vegnutrition.com/dragon and try their full line of supplements, and you'll get 15% off. Or you can just use Dragon at checkout and you'll get 15% off. So that's vegnutrition.com/dragon to get 15% off. Veg Nutrition, live better. Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, just to simplify it for people who've never heard this before, is essentially your assets generate enough income for you to live off of in perpetuity. Is kind of an even easier way to think about it. And so what Brad is talking about is if you had $1 million invested in low cost index funds, you could basically live off 4% of that almost into perpetuity, provided 99% of the time you'll be totally fine. Now, of course, there could be a zombie apocalypse or whatever. But the thing that I love so much about the 4% rule of thumb. And we'll link to that article. It's called The Shockingly Simple Math Behind Early Retirement. And that was the article. I read that and I was like, oh my God.
That changed my life.
Oh my God. It's completely changed my life. And I've talked about it on the show before, but for any new listeners or people who haven't read that, go read that. And then once you just understand the math, and it's not hard, like I'm not super good at math, but he lays it out for us. And then I was like, oh my God, wait, so you're saying if I can get my savings rate, how much of my take home pay minus my expenses divided by my take home pay, that's the savings rate, up to like 90% plus, I can be financially independent in like less than 4 years, like 2 to 4 years. And that's exactly what I did. So I was like, I went nuts. I was like, how much freaking money can I make and how low can I keep my cost of living? So I watched all my friends go buy houses and upgrade to nicer houses and buy nicer cars. And I was like, no way. I sold my Range Rover, got a Prius, and had a crazy low rent. And so basically, that's how I rocketed my way to financial independence, was because, I probably heard about that article from Choose FI and was like, oh, I need to go check this article out. I can't totally remember, but it's just like, I love the framework. And that's just one version of financial independence. And at some point, I'd like to talk about the kind of other versions of financial independence, because on that episode that I mentioned, 392 of your show, you talk about there's different versions of financial independence. So it's like, if saving $1 million seems like impossible to you, there are other ways that work just as good or maybe even faster. So before we get into that, I want to talk about you actually achieving financial independence in your own life, because I think that's a really valuable story. Because, I just had this client ask me today, hey, like I don't make a ton of money, and I'm really like intrigued by this idea of financial independence. Like, do you think I could do that? And I could sense the doubt in his question, like, oh, that's not possible for me because I don't make enough money. And, I know you didn't make like super low income or anything like that, but, from my understanding, you didn't make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and you did it by 35. So let's share your journey to financial independence.
Yeah, and I think it is illustrative of kind of like a middle class lifestyle, and how it's funny because actually the other article that I love, among many, but from Mr. Money Mustache, is one called "How to Go from Middle Class to Kick Ass." And that's probably my second favorite article on his website. So for anybody looking for more in-depth reading, certainly if you're looking for podcasts on FI, check out Choose FI. But reading wise, definitely Mr. Money Mustache is, I think both of us would say that's the place to go. And I mean, my life has been one of it's been an interesting journey. And it's funny because I would say I've been intentional about a lot of things, but you used the word before, luck. And I think people discount how much luck factors into success sometimes. And that's not like, I don't view that as minimizing success at all. It's just, I was talking to my daughter. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I try to like pepper all these life lessons that I picked up like in like really interesting and fun ways, or at least I think they're interesting and fun. But and I was just talking to her about luck and just how important it is, and how people who don't think that they had any luck along the way are either just liars or fools, or don't actually understand how the world works. Because there's luck in every success, and that doesn't minimize your success, right? Like, I think I like to talk about like luck surface area, and it's how do I increase my surface area where luck can take hold. So I'm taking in information, I'm learning, I'm always thinking about strategy and how could this theoretically work. But I mean, Justin, I've had probably 5. I talked about Digital Alchemist LLC. If that made $1,000 over 3 years, it would be a lot, right? So like that was one of 10 different businesses I've had, and the vast majority of them have like quote unquote failed, but I've learned something every step of the way. And would my success, and this is jumping ahead 57 steps of where I'm going to start with my story, but would my success with originally richmondsavers.com and then really success with Travel Miles 101 and then the supercharged success with Choose FI, would any of that have been possible without selling drop shipped firewood storage racks after reading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, where he sold French sailor shirts, right? Like, would that have been possible? No, it wouldn't. Would it have been possible? I know you're a huge soccer fan. I played soccer my whole life. I had a website called soccertools.com where I was like literally hard coding in like 2008, like HTML English Premier League tables, like results tables into this website, like a decade before the rest of America caught up to the English Premier League. So like it's all of that stuff increased my Lux service area because I made connections with, I understood how to make money online if I ever got some traffic, so like all of these things, I think that's how I think about life, is that increase of Lux service area. Because if you've played enough poker, like I'm a very, very much an amateur poker player, but I'm reasonably good and I understand probability. I understand that in life, you can go in with the best hand and you could lose X% of the time. And that doesn't mean you made the wrong decision, right? And like all of these things, layering this framework into your brain just gives you a better chance of success because you understand the way the world works. So Justin, that is a very long, again, like I said, 57 steps ahead.
No, like it's like, I just have to comment on that because it's so critically important. Like this concept of increasing your Lux surface area is so powerful. And I've never kind of like, I thought about it a different way. I've thought about it in the sense that luck favors the prepared. So basically, if I hadn't been preparing for financial independence through self-education, through Choose FI and Mr. Money Mustache and, some of the other bloggers like Jillian from, JillianJohnsroot.com and reading and educating, I would have and having mentors. I had mentors who taught me how to earn more money, make more money in my career. Like if I hadn't done all those things, I would have completely missed the opportunities. That because, and Jonathan says this all the time, and it's something I say all the time too, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then, as I was self-educating and these opportunities arose, I was like, oh my God, here's a way to radically improve my speed towards financial independence. And when I first started, I thought it would take me 7 to 10 years. And then because I was increasing my Lux surface area like crazy through education and taking action in all the ways I could, when those opportunities arose, I was able to actually see them consciously and act upon them. So I love the concept. Super cool.
It's like the reticular activating system that we have, right?
Yep. RAS,
you buy a car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere. It's the same as this. It's like when you're even loosely prepared for something, or you have even just a rudimentary knowledge, which is why I like to learn far and wide. And I don't necessarily go deep on a ton of things, except for when I'm really jazzed up about something. But I think learning a little bit mental models and or that concept of having the baseline knowledge in a ton of different subjects. And for me, I take in a ton of podcasts. That's where I learn a lot at this point. And of course, news. And I'm reading the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, and all this kind of stuff. But it allows you to make connections in ways that you otherwise wouldn't. And it's so, can I synthesize information from wildly varying backgrounds and fields in ways that are potentially novel? And I think that is where, so we talk about the talent stack. The author Scott Adams has an amazing book. I always get it slightly wrong, but it's How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, I think is pretty close to the title, if not exactly spot on. And he talks about the talent stack of what kind of skills do I have that I might not be world class. I might not be top 1%, but if I'm top 20% at X, Y, and Z, and I can put those together. Well, maybe the world has never seen that, which is interesting because that's exactly my story of like actual entrepreneurial success. And that was, so I was a CPA. I literally, like the most boring, horrible job you could imagine. I was a corporate tax manager for like a large baking business in Richmond, Virginia, doing corporate state tax returns. Like you couldn't list a worse job than that, essentially. I mean, it was fine and it provided a great life for my family, yada, yada, yada. But it was mind-numbingly awful, right? But but that said, I was a CPA. And I also had learned to maximize credit card travel rewards points. Okay. So now, how many people are there on earth that are, let's say, top 10% at both of those things? And then you throw in that I have a 5 to 7 year string of failures, albeit, but rudimentary knowledge of creating websites, understanding affiliate income, understanding SEO, et cetera. Like, again, I hadn't had a success at it, but I was better than minimum 80% of the population, probably 90%. So you have those three things. And then I say, okay, my website, Richmond Savers, is never going to be, it's funny, I actually used to say it was never going to be Mr. Money Mustache, getting millions of page views a month. But I actually didn't have to be. So what I could do was, could I look at the problem a little bit differently? And that's another kind of background that I have in life is like, can I look at the problem a little bit differently? And the problem in that scenario was, okay, I have a website that gets some traffic, but it's not a ton of traffic. It's maybe a couple thousand page views a month or something, and whatever it was. I don't remember exactly, but it was never going to make enough money from traditional, just like old school Google ads or something like that. But I knew that credit card affiliate links were fairly lucrative and that people didn't know how to use rewards points to travel for free. There's a term of travel hacking that I don't exactly love. It just kind of has negative connotations, but that's the easiest way that people refer to it. So like people wanted to get into this, but they felt nervous. So I actually wound up offering a free travel rewards coaching service. So it was entirely free. So you show up to richmondsavers.com. This is back 10 years ago. And you could literally schedule a call with me. And again, at this horrible job at lunch, I would stand outside and walk around the parking lot. And I had a call at noon Eastern and 12:30 Eastern. And I would jump on the phone with random website visitors of mine. And what I knew was, okay, not every single one of these people are going to convert, but I would hear them, I would answer the questions, and I would say, what's the trip you want to take? And then I would take 10 or 15 minutes, and I had templates, and I would write them an email with the exact step-by-step to take a week-long trip to Paris or Disneyland or wherever it may be. And I would give them the credit card links of how to sign up for cards through my site. And again, not everybody is going to convert, but even if 1 out of every 3 of those people, and I just gave them a free service. If you've read the book Influence by Robert Cialdini, you know that reciprocity is one of the major tools of persuasion. And I gave them a completely free service. So they're going to be more likely to click on my links. And I knew that these were lucrative. And if they signed up for 3, 4, 5 credit cards over the next year, that's a residual income stream for me. So again, I looked at it as, wow, how could I take this, my CPA concept of lifetime value of customer and long-term thinking and looking at this differently and turn this into a business with a small amount of traffic. And, that really worked. And I was able to I wasn't making a ton of money, but it was certainly maybe a couple $1,000s a month. It might've been less, but it was somewhere where it was like, all right, I have proved this concept that this thing works, and boom, like I can go from here. I can maybe scale this. And what's funny is when I decided to scale it was the day that I left my corporate job. And that was coming up on 8 years ago to the day, Justin. We're almost at exactly 8 years ago when I started that website, Travel Miles 101. So that's kind of, it's funny. I put the cart before the horse here and talked more of my entrepreneurial journey, but it's really inextricably linked to my FI journey.
Several really good points. First, talent stack. That is like something that you and Jonathan have talked about on the podcast so much, and again, played such a huge role in my own life. And just to share, so like for me, one of the reasons I finally started my online fitness and money coaching is I'm not the fittest person in the world, but I'm more fit than a majority of people out there. Like there's plenty of people more fit than me, but I'm probably more fit than, 80 to 90% of people. Maybe
probably 99,
more.
but we'll go with 80 to okay. Yeah.
And I'm not the richest person either. Like, I'm a multimillionaire, but I'm not like a decamillionaire or anything like that. And I've had this dream to like coach people forever. And I actually used to coach people for free, similar to you. I wasn't as strategic as you. Like you literally like took booked calls, but I had like these mentees that I would mentor on like fitness and money. And I did it for free, totally loved it out of pure, love. And then, like I was saying, the pandemic happened and we took, the 5 meetups virtual. So I started to get really good at like presenting and just speaking online. And for my work at Garton, suddenly I had to do every presentation virtually instead of in person. So I got really good. And so I was really good at like presenting online. And then I was, really good at fitness and really good at kind of like all the money concepts. And then I looked in the fitness space and I was like, is there like a fitness and money coaching program where it's both? And still to this day, I have not seen one that covers both.
Wow, you're the only one.
No,
that's astonishing.
I mean, maybe someone will message me after this and be like, oh, here's another one. But I was like, these are the two things I'm most passionate about. I have a pretty like high degree of success in them. And then I have the skills to put on like a group coaching thing. And then, it also was, again, luck because I have a business partner who has been doing online coaching for 2.5 years. And he's crossing 7 figures in sales this year through his own coaching. And I randomly in a conversation was like, I've always wanted to do fitness and money coaching, like a hybrid. And he was like, we should talk. And then he became my business partner. So, and it's group coaching. So basically I get to, meet up with, a bunch of people who are interested in taking their fitness and finance to the next level. And this is like my talent stack. And like, the reason I got to this is, in large part because you guys were talking about talent stack on Choose FI all the time. And so over the years, I've been like building these different talents. And then finally this year, it all culminated into that, and so I just want to I just want to like say thank you and like how the talent stack has like appeared in my own life. And it's like, it's such a powerful framework and that so many people like have these weird disparate skill sets that if they just figure out how to put them together, then they can like literally transform people's lives. Like travel miles 101, like it has empowered me to go. Like I haven't paid for a flight since like the 2018.
Isn't it amazing? It's like, crazy.
And it's like, and it's like you're saving like $5,000 to $15,000 plus a year, and you get to go have these epic like trips, and it's all like, and it's just like, I mean, the service that you do through Choose FI and Travel Miles 101 is so awesome. The other incredible thing that you pointed out that I like to call out for the audience is like, you kind of like failed your way forward to finally getting success, right? Like you had this like online like firewood business, and you had
never lit a fire in my entire life, and I had a firewood storage rack business.
Yeah, you had the soccer gear like business, that never like took off, before soccer got more popular in the US, and all these other things. And you were, you didn't just like quit your job and like, okay, I'm going to go pursue my passion, which I am not a fan of. Like, you have to burn the bridges and like go like give it your all. I think there's a much more kind of like peaceful, like way where you can like start things on the side, and then until you find the one that really makes traction, like you can keep the job that like pays the bills and make you feel financially secure. Like it's so much less stressful. And I think especially for older people who have kids and a mortgage, like the whole like, you know, burn the bridges, quit your job and follow your passion, like it's not even a reality.
No. Yeah, I'm totally with you. And that is, I mean, exactly what I did, right? I proved it out. So for me, well, obviously, like I said, I wasn't making a ton of money from the travel coaching. It was enough that, okay, I'm only devoting an hour a day to this, or an hour and change, and I'm making a not insignificant amount of money. So to me, that was
a couple $1,000s a month. That's like
right?
pretty
Like,
good.
I mean, for an online business. That's incredible. So I mean, that was proof of concept to me, which was all I needed. That was the thing. Like I wanted to go all in this, but I didn't have that burn the boats lifestyle. I didn't have, it wasn't conceivable. I had 2 kids, right? Like I was exactly that person you're describing with a mortgage and kids. And the likelihood of me, after we had designed our lives around my wife staying home with our kids, and that's part of our 5 journey that I'll kind of rewind to in a minute here, but it just wasn't conceivable. But my wife knew, and we had talked about this obviously, that I was passionate about this and that I believe that I could make it happen. I always believed that. And it was just finding that success and proving it out. And then it was full speed ahead. So I think that's what's kind of cool about my kind of entrepreneurial side of the journey. But yeah, kind of rewinding way back to, I guess, my early 20s, let's say. So, you know, I kind of did everything right, if you will. Like growing up, I, you know, similar to you, I didn't actually go to the ultra elite college, but I did get into like Duke and Cornell and places like that. So, you know, I did very well for myself in high school, and just always like got a job at Arthur Andersen, which for people under maybe 35 or thereabouts have probably never heard of that. But that was the biggest accounting firm in the world when I graduated from college in 2001. And again, historical event, but there was this Enron scandal, and basically Arthur Andersen was their public accounting firm, their auditing firm, and they went down. They went down in that blow up. So picture living your life, doing everything quote unquote right, and at 22, you get a job at the biggest accounting firm in the world, and 9 months later, they no longer exist, right? Like,
that's
isn't that
wild.
crazy? Like, imagine.
I didn't actually realize. I mean, maybe I'd heard, but I've forgotten that your accounting firm was part of Enron. That's so. I mean, that's always the example when people are like, "Hey, I'm gonna invest in like this single stock, like one company." I'm like,
remember Enron?
No, like index funds, because like everyone thought Enron was like an amazing company, and literally. Like people who like had a ton of money, like all the people who work there and they're getting all their like stock options in, you know, or their whatever, you know, part of their pay was in stock. Like they were financially ruined because all their money was in a single stock. So that's so cool. You were part of that. Well, no, in a sense, part of it.
It worked out fine. And luckily, and luckily, I was the lowest person on the totem pole, and the partners of our firm wound up very benevolently kind of negotiating a deal with KPMG. We picked up our desks, we moved across the street, and we were fine. So it was no big deal for me, and I think this is actually the part that informed kind of my FI journey. And I learned a couple of lessons just in those first handful of months, and it wasn't necessarily around Enron, but this particular one is these people who I looked up to in the firm, who, again, we'd all lived these lives of this is the next step. And then the next step was, oh, you can make partner at this public accounting firm and make X, whatever it was, 500,000 a year, $1 million a year, or more. But what I realized was all of these people, the partners, the senior managers, when the firm was going under, if they were spending all their money, and many of them were, especially living on Long Island, super high cost of living area right outside of New York City, they were poor. It doesn't matter what they made. The income didn't matter. because they had no savings. They had no net worth. They were living paycheck to paycheck, no matter how much that paycheck was. And their lives were going to disintegrate 90 days from then when the mortgage came due. Right. And like, that was such a preposterous thing to me that I couldn't imagine living that stressful life on the edge where everything has to go perfectly all the time. And I think that's like, I kind of have this little, maybe like a deprivation mindset in some regard. I think it's like, I conceptualize it positively of like being prepared, but I think there's always that, oh, what happens if part of my brain that goes, and I saw that again as a 22-year-old kid. Well, what happens if the firm goes away? Or more realistically for most people is, what happens if I get fired, right? What happens if I lose my job? What happens if I get downsized or the firm merges and they don't need our accounting department, the other accounting department won out, right? Like that could happen. That happens to millions of people. That happens all the time. And to live paycheck to paycheck when that could happen at any given moment, even through no fault of my own, even if I was a high performer, that made no sense to me, right? Like, again, looking at early lessons of, okay, you grow up, every year you have summer, you have a couple months off. And again, you do everything right, you get a great job, and you're lucky if you can take a week off, right? So you have 5 work days plus 2 weekends on either side. You have 9 calendar days. I was like, well, shit, this is the next 40 years of my life. Like 9 days off in a row is the most, like, what are we talking about here? Right? Like, this is the goal. So it's just like little things like that. Again, like, what game am I playing? Like, what am I optimizing for? Am I optimizing for, I can tell someone I'm a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, or am I optimizing for the life I want to live? And those can be very divergent, really.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. This show is brought to you by Feel Free from Botanic Tonics. This product is unlike anything I've ever had before. No joke. It's made with kava root and other ancient plants, and just half a shot gives me this incredible sense of focused flow and productivity. And I love to take just half a shot right before I work out. I take it with my pre-workout, and it takes my workouts to the next level. It is seriously unlike anything I've ever had. It's also an incredible productivity tool for any big work projects that you have, or long periods of time where you just need to be super focused in flow state and get a lot of shit done. So if you want to give this a shot, you can go to botanictonics.com and use code DRAGON at checkout to get 40% off your first order. No joke, 40% off with code DRAGON. That's Feel Free from botanictonics.com, code DRAGON. Feel free, feel good. Yeah. I still have friends in the Bay Area who make incredible amounts of money, and they are like 2 to 3 months away. Like if they lost that like super high income, they're 2 to 3 months away from like literally like the house of cards falling down. And I'm just like, and they're making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. And now granted, like you can make that kind of money in the Bay Area, you know, working in tech. But it's just like, it's absolutely wild to me. And I used to be that person. I used to make $150,000 to $200,000, and I would spend it all. This is back in my previous life. Before I moved to the Bay, I was working in Hollywood nightclubs where it was all about like looking rich.
Yeah. That's a lot of it, no matter what, rich. Right? Looking rich. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So you started basically realizing like, hey, I don't want to put myself in that position. So I assume you started, you know, saving at least a good portion of your pay. Yeah. Like, how did that work? Take us from kind of that realization to the next steps.
So, yeah. So my wife and I, we always knew that we could make a life, right? Again, we're both CPAs. We had upside potential, but it would have always required giving something up or giving multiple somethings up, right? Like we thought about this. Okay, we're getting married. We're pretty young, but we're planning on having kids, right? Like, so these, as I call them, the future fictional kids, were really part of this decision of, okay, we want, in a perfect world, one of us to stay at home and be with the kids. So what does that mean? We have to design a life where we can get by on one of our incomes and still save money. And albeit you're not going to save 90% of your income, right? When you only have your income's cut in half, that's not possible. But that wasn't the goal. It's what are you optimizing for, right? So we were optimizing for, is this possible? Could we still save a little bit of money? Could we still save for retirement? Could we still save for travel? This was maybe before the travel rewards thing. Could we still save for the kids going to college someday? Like, we didn't want to, by definition, have to give something up just because of where we lived and because that's where our family and friends were. And listen, it's not easy to move away from your family and friends, but this was in service of something greater. And Justin, like, how I think about the financial independence community is again, it's not that deprivation mindset. It's not the, I hate my life or I hate my job, so I'm doing everything to run away from it. Like, I don't think that's a path to success. I think you need to be running towards something. And again, for us, it was these future fictional kids and like this life that we wouldn't have to give something up by definition. So we made the really tough decision to move down to Richmond, Virginia. And I mean, it's been 16 years at this point. We've lived down here, which is wild and hard to believe. But it was the best decision we ever made. And, that said, it was tough. It's not easy to move away from family and friends. It isn't. But
did you
that
do
was the
that
decision.
to get into a lower cost of living area? Like, walk us through the decision. Like, why'd you go to Richmond?
Yeah. So I actually went to the University of Richmond for undergrad and went back home after college. And in a weird quirk of fate, the company that I worked for, so after I left public accounting, I went to work for this big, like the biggest baking company in America. So, Thomas's English Muffins and Entenmann's Cake and Cookies, all this stuff, like a massive, massive company, like a Fortune 500 level company. It's funny when I say a baking company because you certainly have different ideas in your head. But we had tax personnel in two spots, Long Island and Richmond, which oddly were the only two places I'd ever lived in my whole life. And again, we're getting married. Ooh, there's luck, right? There's like bizarre quirk of fate. And we're getting married. We made the decision we didn't want to live in Long Island anymore. And I asked the VP of my department, hey, could we move down to Richmond? And he was in Richmond, so he was thrilled, right? He wanted more of us to be down there. So it was fantastic. It was a slam dunk. I wound up making the same salary. I didn't take like a cost of living hit or anything like that. And just picked up my desk and moved down here. And we were very intentional about where we purchased a house. We bought in like a great school district because public schools are really important to us. We both went to public schools and we wanted to basically live in like the nicest part of town, but we found the least expensive 4-bedroom house we could possibly find. And it was a perfectly nice house. It wasn't huge, but it was lovely. And I mean, we lived there for 12 plus years. And just making these decisions that could work long term. Like, again, that's how I think about like, okay, could we live in this house for 20, 30 years? We definitely could have. I mean, we wound up moving, and this is maybe where we go with the conversation is maybe kind of reconceptualizing a FI life to more of like a Ramit style, how do I live a rich life? Yeah. Or what does your rich life look like? And I think it's important that people don't think, and I've said this a couple of times, that financial independence is about deprivation. Because if you saw my life, like I am rolling in abundance. I mean, like rolling in abundance is what I feel like. But yet we're still living a less expensive life than just about everybody around us, even though by any means we're pretty wealthy. And it's an interesting rethink. It's like, how do you play this game of life and succeed wildly while everybody around you is living paycheck to paycheck for what is ostensibly the same life, but you're just making a couple of optimized decisions. So like, it's fun for like a board game player, like we are, like, it's fun, man. That's what makes it cool.
Yeah. A couple comments on that. So in large part, again, I wasn't joking. Like, I'm not like trying to like make you feel good about the podcast that you do because you're coming on my podcast, but literally because you have so many episodes on your podcast about really talking about your why of FI and really being super intentional and being what you like to call like a valuist, with your purchases. Like, are your purchases aligned with what you truly value in your life? So for me, I was like, okay, well, I want to create a framework around my pursuit of financial independence so that I don't like deprive myself, but instead, for me, I was like, I'm going to pursue FI while having as much fun and experiencing as much abundance in my life as possible. At the same time, I'm pursuing FI. And by doing that move, like everything, like, so I went hyper frugal for 2 years.
Okay.
That was part of it. But for me, it was like this super fun game. I was like, how much, like, so I played the game of like, how high could I get my savings rate? And it was just like, it was so fun. And there's two parts to that equation, right? There's how much can I earn and how much, like, how low can I get my cost of living? And similar to you, like, we were in a very nice neighborhood for 9 years, but we were in like not the nicest house. It wasn't terrible, but it was like the houses next to us were like multi-million dollar, I mean, even our house was valued at like $2 million, but like really, like if someone bought it, they'd probably just tear it down and build like a mansion there, because we were in like Menlo Park proper, which is like just like a lot of tech millionaires and billionaires there, and really, really close to Atherton, which is even like mega mansions are in Atherton. But like so for me, it was like this hilariously fun game. And like similar to you, I was playing the game of life with this like kind of like FI focus, right? And I think that's like so critical for people to realize, is that like when you're pursuing financial independence, even if you've like driven yourself into debt and you're like, you don't know like how you're going to get out from under it, if you start to treat it more like a game and a way for you to find abundance within that game, instead of like, oh, I have to give up this or I have to give up that, but instead I get to do this, which then empowers me to create more of a gap between my savings and my spending, which gives me more freedom, because now I have, instead of just 2 months like of living, now I have 4 months, then I have 8 months, then I have 12 months. And then like eventually you're like, holy shit, like I don't have to work for years and I'd be totally okay. And then eventually it gets to this point like, oh my fucking God, like I don't ever have to work unless I want to. And I'm very similar to you. Like, I love to like, do work that creates a positive impact in the world, because like humans are like, we are fueled by making progress and having a positive impact in the world. And, I think like, you and Jonathan have done such a beautiful job with that with Choose FI. Like you really kind of led the financial independence movement becoming a heck of a lot more widespread and giving people the tools and the knowledge in which to create this in their own life. And this is like, I loved how you guys always bring in so many different guests that achieved FI in so many different ways, because then you would start to see like, oh, like that person, like I admire what they did, but that's not me. But then maybe the next guest, you're like, oh my God, they have the same job as me or same career. Maybe this is possible for me. And going back to like what my client asked me, like I know for sure that you have on your podcast a guest who literally, never went to college, never earned a ton of money, but has still achieved financial independence. And I'm just going to be like, message you afterwards and be like, which podcast episode am I sending to this client? Because I want to give him hope and a template or a framework through which he can start to work towards it through his own kind of like version of the financial independence journey.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly it. I mean, we've hit on that the world runs on stories and people connect through those stories, right? Like people aren't looking for experts. They really aren't. They're looking for connection.
Yeah.
And when you see yourself in someone else who has overcome something, right? This hasn't been easy from day one, who has overcome something and has succeeded in the face of that, of those troubles and adversity. Like that is a remarkable thing. And listen, there are plenty of people who got this right from 22, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that would be more like me, even though that said,
Cody Berman.
Right? Yeah, Cody Berman. Cody's the perfect example.
We
like,
love Cody, but like he's just like he did it
right.
so
and
well.
He was locked in. And I mean, listen, like I've had catastrophic issues with like real estate investing that was actually speculation, like all this other nonsense, right? And like, so to say that my life has been perfect is so far from the truth. But again, people can see themselves in my story. They can see themselves in your story, or even Cody's, right? Or like who has been perfect from day one. And like that, it's so important to believe that you can do this and not think that it's some other they. Right. Because it's so easy to just say like, oh, they can do it because of that X, Y, and Z privilege. And like, listen, I get that obviously people's lives are coming from all different places and I would never minimize that. But that said, it's so easy to just write something off, not just about FI, but anything as they can do it because of that. Yeah. And when you see yourself in someone else's story, and you see them succeeding, it emboldens you to take action. And I mean, Justin, how many times have you heard me say that? Like, all I care about is that people listen to our podcast and take action.
Yep.
I'm not doing this just so people can hear my voice. I don't care one iota about that. I'm doing it so that you listen and you find actionable content. Like if you're listening for an hour and you're not leaving with one or two things that you can walk away with, we've all wasted each other's time. So I want to embolden people to take action. And that really is the key. And that's not going to come just from hearing me pontificate for 600 hours, and I say that kind of jokingly because I don't pontificate or I try not to, but it is so important that we get a range of stories because this is a community. And thank you for pointing out that like the thing that we've tried so hard to do is make this inclusive in the best way possible. That it's not like Mr. Money Mustache was the one who really popularized this, but I think it's easy to write him off as a they because he was making a high income. He was tech. He was in his 30s and, whatever, all the other nonsense. He's a white guy with blah, 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 and it was easy to caricature early people in the financial independence community as that. Because there were a couple people, famously Brandon the Mad Scientist and people like that, that fit that exact profile. And I think what we've done is try to say this is a worldwide movement of people trying to make their lives better, one action at a time. And when you start with that as the point, that's pretty damn empowering.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, for me, like I'm in tech, but I'm not an engineer. Like I'm in sales. And so I was like through all these different stories, I'm like, well, why can't I do it in sales? Like, you know what I mean? Like salespeople have, many of them unlimited upside, right? So like, how can I leverage that? And that's what I leveraged. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm just going to like maximize my earning potential because it's a huge lever that I have direct influence over. So like the better of a salesperson I become, the more I earn. And then as long as I don't fall prey to lifestyle inflation, which many of my friends and colleagues in the Bay Area have fallen to, like, then I can like create, this incredibly abundant life. And so for you, Brad, I definitely want to go into the kind of like the, you hit financial independence and then you really start to rethink kind of like, okay, I was optimizing, my expenses to be as low as possible to like get me to FI as fast as possible. But then there's this transition period for some. I would argue Mr. Money Mustache has stayed frugal. But for me, the last year or two, I've been asking myself this question, where can I spend more money to make my life even more rich for me personally, that is aligned with my vision, my values, and my mission in this world. And, so for me, like just a couple quick examples to start to like percolate your mind, because I want to know what you've done, is for 2 years, I didn't get a single massage. And that was something like I used to do beforehand, as I'd pay for a professional massage back when I used to work in, the Hollywood nightclub business. And, it was like $150 or whatever. And when I went like full on frugal mode for like 2 years, I was like, I'm not like, I'll massage myself with a foam roller. I don't even care. And then over the last, I would say 6 to 12 months, I was like, you know what, getting a massage, once every week or every other week, or at least like once or twice a month, like that makes my life feel so rich. And because for me, like my fitness is such a big personal value to me. So why wouldn't, and I'm 40 now. So like, why wouldn't I invest in the rejuvenation and the longevity of my body? And so now I look at massages as an investment in my long-term fitness and well-being. And so like now I feel great about spending the money because I'm investing in this meat sack that is like carrying me through life. And like, I want this machine to be the highest performing that it can be. So that was like one way that I started. And then you mentioned something, I think, around your house, like recently or in the last few years, or maybe I miscaught that.
Yeah, no, you got it right now.
Well, tell me
it's funny
how
that
you
mentioned that you mentioned massage. I actually literally still have the cupping marks on my my back from I went last Thursday for a massage and that cupping therapy. So I'm right with you, and we'll talk more about the body and such, because that is also where I've been investing significantly for similar reasons. I'm 43 now, and I want to be healthy and have not just longevity, but have a significant health span into my 80s and beyond. So I mean that's something that is hugely important. But yeah, just real quick with the house is, about 4 years ago we made the decision that while we liked our house, it was a little bit too small in a perfect world, and we weren't really in a community. We were in one little corridor cul-de-sac just off a main road, and we didn't really know anybody, and it wasn't like the lifestyle we were looking for. And we knew of a particular community that was in the same elementary school, so my kids wouldn't have to get uprooted. And we knew literally dozens of families in this community. So we kind of found our perfect house. And obviously, almost by definition, the house was more expensive than the one we left. But it was such a no-brainer for us that we didn't think about it as, or hem and haw over, is this going to be a bad FI move? It didn't matter, right? It was purely a lifestyle decision. And I think, amongst your rich life so there's a couple things. So there's Ramit who talks about the rich life. There's a book called Die with Zero by a gentleman named Bill Perkins. And it was, the concept behind the book was really changed how I think about money and time, also in conjunction with an article called The Tail End by on a website called Wait But Why. So The Tail End. And I see you nodding, and Justin, and so you've read this. And I have kids, and what's so interesting about this article is it visualizes your life in terms of almost like boxes, in terms of your X number of year life, let's say a 90-year life or some such. And one of the parts that the author Tim Urban talks about is how much time you will spend with your kids. And basically, like, by X age, how much of the number of hours that you'll ever spend with them have you spent with them, basically. And it's more or less by the time they're 18 or 19, more or less, like basically when they go off to college, you will have spent somewhere on the order of 95% of all the hours you will ever spend with your kid.
Yeah.
95%. And like I said before, I have a 14-year-old, I have a nearly 11-year-old, and that means at 5% a year, roughly, we're at 70% for my 14-year-old. And when you think about that and you internalize it and you say, okay, I could save all this money and I could be that decamillionaire or beyond when I'm 80 or 90, right? Do I want to be? Is that what I'm optimizing for? Or am I optimizing for, could I change, like Die with Zero talks about, and it's not die as a pauper. It's none of that nonsense. It's just changing when you think about, or changing how you think about spending in terms of number of years, and doing it when you're the healthiest and you can really get maximum benefit from that spending. And it's funny because he comes down not on when you're 20 and you can go and rule the world physically, but when you're in those intermediate years, maybe in your 40s and 50s, where you have some wealth, especially, people like us, obviously, who have some wealth, and you still have your health and fitness.
Yep.
And again, in my case, with having kids this age, like I'm in this perfect sweet spot of, hey, it might be smart to front load some of that spending from when I'm 80 to when I'm 43 to 50, when we can make these memories. We can enjoy. We don't have to think about, oh, should I not take that trip because it costs $5,000, right? Like when I'm 80, am I going to even worry and I am a decamillionaire just by compounding, right? Which is a guarantee in essence. Am I going to care about that $5,000, or am I going to think back on that time that we went on this amazing trip to wherever it is, Hawaii or wherever, or we just bought a hot tub, right? Like this is one of these things we've hemmed and hawed about for years, and we always wanted one, and we got it in April, and we've essentially been in the thing every single day. And it's been amazing. And I know for most people, hot tubs are like treadmills where they're essentially like clothes hangers, that you don't use. But we've used the damn thing every day, and that's through the summer. We finally just got our cold weather. And again, health and fitness. I've been listening to the Huberman Lab podcast, so I know
such a good podcast,
which is amazing. So I'm getting my early morning, low angle sunlight. I get out there at in the 6 a.m., 7 a.m. hour, and it's super cold, and there's the low angle sunlight, and I'm just enjoying. And I'm looking out on nature, to the trees behind us, and I get to spend time with my wife, or my kids jump in the evening or whatever. Like it's one of those things that like we're almost mad at ourselves that it took us so long to make the decision, because like I said, we hemmed and hawed for years. And that's just one of those things that I think by taking in all this information, by rethinking, by being in a different spot, it enabled us to make a decision that we're really happy with. And I know it's a silly example and it's but one example, but I think it's important to rethink the years and how you spend money.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying to understand how to, give this kind of whole reframe, like a name. Like, is it the FI crossover, like where you go from frugality to abundance, or like, is there some other way? Because like there is so much power in the beginning of your FI journey to be frugal, but then you hit this tipping point where it actually makes more sense for overall life optimization, like true happiness, true, richness in all areas of your life, to start to spend more in some or many areas. And you're still like, I'm still very frugal in certain areas, you know what I mean? Because I just don't value it, right? Like I still drive, a 2012 Prius. Now it's like got the mock leather in it, and it's like the nicest version. It's not like completely run down or anything, but I've been hemming and hawing about getting a Model 3 forever. But like for me, it's more because I want to go fully electric, and I want to like continue to lower my impact on the environment. And I also just like crazy world-changing people like Elon Musk. Like I know he does a lot of crazy, not so good things, but he also has changed. A lot of crazy things. He's also transformed the world for the better through many of his endeavors. And I just like people like him and Steve Jobs. So I like to support their companies as well. So I still haven't done it. I'll probably think about it for another, 6 to months to a couple years, but I'm like in no rush. But I did, similar to you, we recently decided that we wanted to get closer to the beach. And so we moved from Menlo Park to Santa Cruz County, and we're now 5 minutes from the beach, where it would normally take us 45 minutes or more if there was traffic, because there's only like one way to get from Menlo Park to the beach. And we also significantly upgraded our home. Like, it's like camera ready. But I did that strategically for me because I do so much work on Instagram where I'm like filming myself in the kitchen and filming myself in my home and like, kind of like doing blogging through my Instagram. And so for me, it was like a studio upgrade for me. And we're at this point, like, I did all the numbers. We're still financially independent, and we're just renting because we want to see, and this is about being intentional. We didn't want to just go buy in Santa Cruz County and realize like, we don't really want to live here. So we decided we'd rent here for 1 year. We found a place that is truly beautiful and stunning that literally makes us feel like we're expanding our life, but it's still like, in cost relativity to like other places that look the same square footage, it's significantly cheaper. Speaking of a hot tub, me and my wife, there's like a community center, and there's a hot tub, and we just went in it yesterday, and we're like, this is so good. And we were looking up at the trees, and like, it's just like when you're in, like, I don't know, something about cold air, hot water, and like nature is like so rejuvenating. Like, that's like definitely like a part of like my fit rich life. And I know you listen to Huberman, so either if you're not doing it now, you're going to be doing it soon. But like, I bought a 100-gallon horse trough
for cold plunge
for ice baths. Yeah. So I make these giant blocks of ice in my fridge because like I don't own this home, so I don't want to buy the super nice like cold plunge that's like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 because I just have to uninstall it. But like I spent $100 on a horse trough, and now I have my poor man's version of an ice bath. And my community has a public pool and a hot tub that's like a 3-minute walk from our house. And so like that's how I've like evolved like my fit rich life. So like one of the other areas I want to cover with you, because I know you're just as passionate as I am, is like your fitness. Like, how have you invested in your fitness? Like, what does your fit rich life now look like? Because I know that's evolved from when you were like, working your way towards FI, then became FI, and then, moved to a nicer house. So like, what are you doing now?
Yeah, I'm exploring, which I think is part of the fun. Yes. And right, like similar to you, I am definitely spending money, and happily so, on being healthy and on my body and fitness, and just trying to be more intentional, I guess. And this kind of ties into a bunch of things. I think as you go down the rabbit hole of being aware of things, you uncover potentially issues that you were wholly unaware of, and you just took as like background. So for instance, like I always said, like, I have allergies, or like I have this post-nasal drip or whatever. And it's like, oh, well, that happens right after I eat pretzels or something. And it's like, oh, what's in there? There's basically just gluten. Oh, interesting. I also have this issue when I drink certain types of beers, but not when I drink cider, which also has no gluten. So like, again, I, for my entire adult life, have kind of taken it for granted that I have allergies. And I've realized that I have a gluten sensitivity. So it's just something that like, and it might be more than that, frankly. And I suspect, you and I could talk more about this offline, but it's the first step. And I've noticed that I've just felt dramatically better the last handful of months since I've not been eating gluten. Yeah. So something like that, again, I think the point that I want to leave for the audience with that specifically is not this stupid gluten thing with me, but like just being aware and just questioning things, right? So I have always said that, like with the fitness, that I've the hunched shoulders and like very tight hip flexors. And oh, I am a soccer player, and I could come up with every excuse, right? Like I have these super tight like calves because I'm a soccer player, and yada yada yada. But again, in listening to Huberman, and then I'm sure you listen to Dr. Peter Attia, and who's just utterly brilliant. And okay, wow. So he talked about for his entire life, he lifted heavy and was, the 500-pound deadlifts and this and that. And then a couple of years ago, he started doing a program called DNS, which is Dynamic Neuromuscular Stabilization. And he's been talking about how he basically started from scratch with his body and how to move, because we all compensate, right? Like we have these movement patterns that we're just compensating for things. And this is something, Justin, I didn't even tell you about this beforehand, but like in the last 3 weeks, I found the one DNS practitioner in Richmond, Virginia, which was awesome, because after hearing Attia talk about it for 2 years, and I went back and listened to the 2 episodes that he talked about it most in depth. I'm like, I've got to do this. I've got to give this a try, because again, I have these limitations. And like, I'm a pretty fit guy, but like when I go to the gym, when I go to CrossFit, which is another thing that I invest in, like I'm not like a dyed in the wool CrossFit person by any means, but I find it good functional fitness. And I kind of, my neck locks up when I do push press or like whatever, or pick the thing, and it's like, so I don't do pull-ups, I don't do push press because my neck locks up. Well, stupid. Like, you're 43 years old and you're super healthy and you're like really, really fit for like a random 43-year-old dude. Like, you shouldn't accept these limitations. Right. Yeah. So like I have been experimenting and just trying to get to the bottom of it. And I went to, this massage, I went to a chiropractor, and like I never found like the answer. And interestingly, I went to this DNS practitioner, and like I didn't prejudice him with like what my issues were. He didn't want to hear it. He just wanted to kind of give me a once over and explore. And the 2 things he found were the 2 things I had issues with. And what's wild about that, and this is not an advertisement for DNS by any means, but like what's wild about that entire modality is it looks at the development of a human from 0 to 12 months and these milestones that you should have at X month. And what's super interesting, Justin, is for whatever reason, the 3-month development of lifting your head in a certain way, I somehow just missed that. And I know this sounds weird and hokey to somebody who knows nothing about this, but like when he had me do just a simple, picture yourself like lying prone on the ground, so on your stomach, and basically just trying to lift your head, but not like bent at the neck, but just kind of lifting your torso and head. And I could send a video over. It was excruciatingly hard for me, like to the point where I would way rather go to the gym and deadlift like 350 than do this simple exercise that like my 3-month-old niece is doing, as literally learning developmentally, because I just missed it somehow. And then I've built up all these strategies around it that these other muscles compensate. And I've been working on this, and lo and behold, I don't have tight hip flexors. They feel fantastic. Lo and behold, I look in the mirror and I don't look like I'm hunched over my shoulders. Like, and granted, it didn't improve overnight, and it's not 100% there, but like, it's just exploring and trying to figure these things out, and being open-minded and spending some money, frankly, right? Like, this is not super cheap, right? But man, it's been the best thing I've ever done.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. Today's show is brought to you by Fit Rich Vegan. If you're ready to get in the best shape of your life, double your income, and 10x your savings and investments, then this is the coaching program for you. But wait a minute, Dragon. Isn't this your coaching program? Heck yeah, it is. I spent the last 8 years mastering my fitness and my finances, and I've built an incredible coaching program with an incredible team to help you get the body of your dreams and finally achieve that level of financial success that you've been seeking.
So if you want to find out if you're a good fit for the program, go to fitrichvegan.com and book your free consultation today. Or you can just DM me on Instagram with the words Fit Rich Vegan, and we can chat about if it's going to be a good fit for you. I'm committed to empowering people to actually achieve their fitness and financial goals. I spent the last 20 years trying to figure this out on my own. And what I realized is the key to doing it is not doing it alone. You have to have coaches, you have to have mentors, and you have to be a part of masterminds. And that's exactly what Fit Rich Vegan has. It has coaches, mentors, and it is a mastermind. So again, if you're ready to book your free consultation today, go to fitrichvegan.com or drop me a DM on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm literally like nodding and shaking my head because you and I are literally in the same place. So no joke, like a week and a half ago, I went to a chiropractor because I've had these like long-standing injuries that I'm just like, why am I tolerating these? Like, I have the resources to work with the professionals that can help me figure this out and dissolve it. Like dissolve the issue, right? Instead of just like, working around it for years, so it's so funny. I literally, my whole neck locked up just the other week because I was doing overhead barbell press. And like, I literally had to I was in so much pain. Like I never take Advil, like never, probably been like 2 or 3 years. I had to take Advil in order to sleep. And then fortunately, the next day I went and got like a 2-hour massage and it like got so much better. And then I went and saw a chiropractor. But for years I've been telling myself I would start working with a chiropractor and like a movement specialist because I have a super tight right hip from a bicycle accident I got in. And, my neck is it's kind of where I keep my stress. And it will if I'm overtired and still pushing myself at the gym, it will get locked up. And so I'm like, I know exactly what you're doing. And so it's just how can we use our resources in order to, heal these root issues forever versus just kind of that's just the way I am, right? That's just the lot I've been served. And so one thing I wanted to mention to you about the hips, and I heard this from Tim Ferriss, there's this tool called the So Right.
Oh, yeah. He said that on 5 Bullet Friday. I almost bought that. Dude,
so worth it.
Nice.
So basically you can use it to release your psoas. And it's Tim makes the funny comment that it's probably the most expensive piece of plastic he's ever bought because it's $69.99 or something like that. But I use it every day now and it's amazing because it just helps you release your psoas, which is part of your hip area and related to your lower back. So for people who have lower back issues, we'll put it in the show notes, but it's one of those tools. And I love how you're reframing the kind of the fit rich life as an exploration versus you're just spending money to spend money. So you're literally, again, you're such an intentional person, Brad. And I love that you're I'm exploring, my fitness right now. And that comes, at times with a cost. Sometimes it's just time and energy. Other times it's you have to make financial investment, but you're investing in your fit rich life. And I absolutely love that. It's funny that we're kind of doing a lot of the similar things at the same time.
Yeah, that's wild. And it is amazing how just that awareness, right?
Uh-huh.
When you're just aware and then we're both Tim Ferriss fans. So again, the expensive piece of plastic. If you listen most recently, he had a MMA guy on named Baz or something, and he talked about this oxygen trainer, this O2 trainer to basically rework your deep diaphragmatic muscles. And again, okay, the intersection of I've just been learning far and wide, and I was doing the mouth taping to breathe through my nose at night. You did the exact same,
so
right?
You've read James Nestor's book.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course. And then
it's called Breath, right?
Say it again.
It's called breath, right?
Yep, it's called breath. I always confuse it. Is it breathe or is it breath? It's breath. Yep. And
yeah. We'll link to
great
that in the
book.
show note, but like all about breathing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about breathing. And like we all breathe through our mouths, and it's like this super suboptimal way. And you can know that intellectually when you think about exercise and like you're just breathing so heavily. And like, what if you change your exercise and optimize for breathing through your nose? And then becoming more efficient, which is, again, what Peter Attia talks about with like zone 2 training and upping your aerobic capacity and actually getting better. Because, Justin, this ties back to what you said an hour ago of humans crave progress.
Yes.
Humans crave mastery.
It's one of the few things that makes us actually happy.
Yes. And it's awesome. And it's like, okay, I can go on the rower and I've got, again, things I invested in. I just invested in one of those like polar heart rate monitors. And can I stay in zone 2 at X number of watts output on the Concept 2 rower? And then what happens if, again, nose breathing, what happens if I get better and I can up my wattage next time? And then all of a sudden, like Rich Roll, I know you're a huge fan of. Rich Roll talked about zone 2 training with his distance running. And hey, I might be excellent, but I'm mouth breathing. And this is not, I might break this all down and I might have to start back 50 steps from where I am now. But what if I start then running 10-minute miles, just breathing through my nose? But then what if I get it down to 8 minutes? And 7.5 minutes and 7 minutes, right?
So you just gave me this incredible insight. Like, and this is why I love fitness and money. So basically, what what if I have to like slow down, let's just use running because that's like the perfect example. Like in order to train in zone 2, which zone 2 is basically, just to give audience a quick, you need to go listen to like Peter Attia and Rich Roll's podcast. But basically, if you can build up your capacity in zone 2, you basically kind of build up your overall capacity for training in general, where you can just like your overall output over a certain, period of time is not infinitely, but significantly larger if you train yourself in zone 2 training. So, like for example, maybe in order to keep your heart rate low enough to run, a mile in zone 2, you have to go from like a minute mile down to a 12-minute because like you just need to keep your heart rate that low. And what you just made me realize with the money journey is like maybe like you have to look at how you're spending your money, and you were spending, $100,000 or more in the Bay Area. And I'm just using the Bay Area because that's where I'm from. And you realize like, wait a minute, if I'm intentional, I can get this down to like 50 or 60. And that sounds like a huge jump, but like it's totally possible. Like if you're just intentional, and it doesn't happen overnight. Like, right? Just like you don't train at a 12-minute mile for like 1 week and then suddenly you can do a zone 2 8-minute mile. It takes months, right? It took me months to lower my my monthly spending down in multiple different ways to where I was able to get down to around, I believe, 40 to 50, call it 45. Like when I was living in Hollywood, I was making $200,000, but I was spending every single dime of it. You know what I mean? And so it's like I had to slow down my spending, just like you have to slow down your running. And this is why I love like fitness and money so much, is because there's so many correlations between the two. And you just like gave me this insight. So I was like basically going and doing my zone 2 training for money, and I had to like completely revamp how I live my life.
Yeah. That's brilliant. No, it's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I mean, you have to think long term. And I think this is the same with both fitness and money, right? I agree with you. It ties together so perfectly, right? Like, because we know that, sure, like quote unquote diets, like they might, again, quote unquote, I hate to do that twice, but like they might work. They might work over a short term, but what is their success rate over an intermediate or a long period of time. I mean, I think the stats bear out that they're not that successful because most of it's that short-termism.
Yeah.
As opposed to how can I make decisions that are going to make me healthy? I conceptualize myself as a healthy person. How will I be healthy 20 years from now? That is, you're going to act very, very differently than if you're going on a crash diet to lose 15 pounds on some stupid scale a month from now or 2 months from now, right? Like totally different.
100%. And that's why I always think about, like, I don't know if you had a Felipe Mejia on your podcast. I think you did. Or he was on Bigger Pockets Money. But anyways, he asked me at the beginning of a podcast interview, he said, like, Justin, like, what is the key to fitness? Because, like, obviously you're doing all right there, Justin. And I was like, it's lifestyle, right? And because if you live, and this is why I'm so passionate about a fit, rich lifestyle, if that is your lifestyle, you will naturally inherit the mindset or adopt or develop the mindset. And then that will translate, so if you live the fit lifestyle, that will naturally translate into having the mindset that healthy eating, or like, that is still delicious, but is also nutritious and fueling your fitness. And then like that then translates down into the daily habits or the weekly habits. And it all stems from like an overarching mindset, and then from a lifestyle to a mindset down to like daily habits. And it's the same with financial independence. It's a lifestyle, right? And then as you continue to go down the path, you realize like, oh, wow, I went from frugality to like get me there to now that I have like so much working in my favor. Like I've built up my zone 2 capacity and financial independence so big that now I can freaking spend significantly more and still be financially independent.
Yeah, I hear you. And that lifestyle also becomes an identity.
100%.
Right? Which is so powerful. It becomes your identity. And I mean, listen, nobody's perfect all the time, and that's not even the goal. Like I think it's certainly directional accuracy. And like if you're depriving yourself all the time, like you're going to feel miserable. But if I'm the type of person that is a healthy person, is trying to make my life healthier and my body better, like I'm going to think about lots of things. And again, like you're going to invest some money. Like I invested in an Oura ring, which I have on right now. And like,
me too.
You've got yours on. Exactly. Both, mine's my wedding ring. It looks like yours might be on the left hand as well.
So I have a Whoop and a Garmin and a heart rate monitor. And here's the other thing that I just did this year. Speaking of kind of continuing to like create more of a fit, rich life, I now have 3 gym memberships because I work out basically 7 days a week. And it is one of my favorite parts of every day. And like, why wouldn't I want to be able to go to more than one playground? Right. Yeah. And it's like, it's $500 for a year at one of them. I'm like, it's $500 and it's like one more playground for me to go to. Now, when I first started my FI journey, that would have been like stupid for me to do that, because I could have like, that's just like a waste of money and time. But now at this point in my life, it's like, wait, that is going to add to the overall richness of my fit lifestyle. Why not?
Yeah. That's super cool. I love that. And yeah, like thinking about it as a playground, I'm thinking about like we have one of those those chains like Crunch Fitness or something like right around the corner, and like it's it's like $10 a month, but or $20 or $25 if you get the classes, and like the classes are really awesome. And for $20 a month, if you think about it like that, of like
it's like crazy cheap.
Yeah, it's nothing. Like there are these like TRX classes and whatnot, and like they're fantastic. And even if I went to a couple a month, like that would be well worth the $20. So yeah, thinking about it as a playground. And then again, like I was saying with the Oura ring, right? Like you realize, okay, if I'm a healthy person, and I've never been a big drinker, so this is not like something huge to give up, but like you notice really quickly when you have certainly 3 drinks, your sleep stats are screwed up to high heaven. Like anything more than that, they're just decimated. And like, I haven't had more than 3 drinks in a long time, but like even 2 sometimes you realize, oh, wow, my deep sleep is normally an hour and 40 minutes a night. And it was 55 minutes last night.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I had 2 drinks last night, right? Or I had a drink at 8 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock for happy hour. Like, and you piece together these little things. And it's not about being perfect. Again, like I said, like if I'm hanging out with a buddy and he wants to like, or whatever, where we have friends over and I have like 1 cider at 7 o'clock as opposed to 5, I'm not doctrinaire about it. Like I'm not a lunatic, but again, it's like directional accuracy. So
Yeah.
do I have more information by having this ring than before? Yeah, I absolutely do. You know,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, stopping eating at 6 o'clock as opposed to having like grazing on a couple snacks at even healthy snacks at 8. Oh, interesting. That makes a huge difference in my sleep stats. You pick up all this stuff, right?
It's incredible. So I just got to share with you because I've been tracking, on 3 different devices. And the reason I do that is because when I first started tracking all my money for financial independence, I had to actually track in both personal capital and Mint because there was something about looking at it through 2 different lenses that just allowed me to grasp it better and like see things better. It just gave me I don't know if it was looking at it twice, but so basically I've actually now I know 2 different foods that radically improve my HRV, which radically improves my recovery. And I would have never figured this out if I hadn't been tracking. So literally it's super weird. Northern beans is one of them. And it's like a white bean that you can get at like, Trader Joe's or Safeway. And then the other one is sweet potato. And, I want to take it to the next level. And like, there's like these other companies that like can get even more in depth, but like my guess is like probably my ancestors ate those and it's like just part like naturally my DNA favors it or something. And so it just like improves my recovery. So now like I try to eat that like at least a few times a week, if not every week, but there's all these little things that you learn and it's like, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then you're like, holy crap, I can totally improve like my like health and my direction in life and all these little things. So absolutely love it.
Super cool. And actually that speaks to just kind of maybe last word on this kind of tracking stuff is what's a quote unquote health food?
Yeah.
Right? Like we think, and we could go down a huge rabbit hole on food and it's probably, this is maybe outside the scope of this, but like, I think the larger point is we've been all led to believe that certain foods are healthy and certain foods are unhealthy.
Yep.
Right. But like you just said, maybe my ancestors ate X or like for me, like maybe my ancestors ate regular potatoes and I feel fantastic when I have a potato, even though people say, oh, it's a carb, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I feel great. It's fantastic.
I totally agree with you. I think, just like your path to financial independence is unique and like you're going to have different strengths than certain people and different weaknesses. I think, fitness and especially nutrition is very specific because to say that everybody should eat like this particular one food item, that's like preposterous. Like
it's a superfood. Come on, man.
Like that food doesn't exist in this part of the world. Like, so your ancestors never ate it. So I think like, one of the beautiful things about the fitness journey is like realizing that like what really works well for you may not work for someone else. And it's really more about your personal journey, but using other people to like help you explore that. You and I both mentioned Tim Ferriss and Huberman and Peter Attia. And these are people who are sharing massive amounts of knowledge that we can try on for size to see like, hey, does this help or hinder? Or is it neutral? Right? And it's just this constant like exploration, but it's like each time we figure out one, we level up a little bit, right? And then you stack all those up and then suddenly you're like, holy crap, like I'm way more fit than I was in my 20s and I'm 40.
Same. Without a doubt. And it's like, and you make these connections, right? So again, that goes back to what we were talking about well over an hour ago with the town stack, right? And like, and having a variety of information and backgrounds and when you can make those connections, then you see it, or you see somebody talk about something in totally like people who don't know each other, have totally disparate backgrounds, but yet they've cued in on that's the key for them. And when you see pieces, like I've seen this zone 2 thing, right? Like I was going to go somewhere with my other option, but like you wind up like the hex bar deadlift is another one that I noted. And I remember that Tim Ferriss talked to a guy named Ryan Flaherty like 7 years ago. And I went back and listened to it. I was like, that's incredible. And I just listened to it. He's this coach for elite runners, so sprinters and such. And he was talking about like force to weight output. And it was just this brilliant thing. And I had just heard somebody else talk about if you could do one exercise, the hex bar deadlift is it. And like I went back and I listened to it. I'm like, wow, that is brilliant. And that intuitively makes sense to me. And not to mention, when you get in the middle of a hex bar, you just feel good. You don't feel like that's my own thing, but like you don't feel like I feel like a back squat just always, it's just like the weight is pressing down on you or a deadlift. Like it's just, right? Like
no, 100%. So I'm a huge fan of trap bar. Deadlift.
Right, synonymous with hex and trap.
Sorry, it's for the audience. Trap bar, hex bar, it's the same thing. But basically, when you get older, loading your spine with a ton of weight, like so, I still squat, but very light. Like I'll barbell squat, but very light because it's like I'm not 20. In my 20s or 30s where I can just like load up the weight and go crazy. Now, like it's all about longevity for me. But the thing that I think is so cool is at the top of the episode, the interview or the show, you brought up RAS. So your RAS, your reticular activating system, is noticing these like, oh, I heard about the trap bar in this. I heard about the trap bar in that. Okay, maybe I need to go try that. And that's like, I like to look at things through science, but also through like spirit. Is that the universe speaking to you? Like saying, hey, maybe this is something you need to explore in your life. And I absolutely love the trap bar because like, you can load up heavier weight and it's just like, it's such an incredible whole body, movement. And it like just, I'm such a big fan.
So we could geek out on that for sure. In terms of also another Peter Attia thing is like the grip strength and carry.
100%.
You can load up your body weight on a trap bar and walk with it, and it just feels great. Like because most of us don't have super heavy kettlebells, like he's talking about. Like I don't have 90-pound kettlebells. I'm not going to go ahead and buy them, but I can load 170 pounds on a trap bar and walk with it.
Yep,
and that feels damn good too.
Yep. So I want to check in with you, Brad, because I've taken a lot of time with you. How are you doing?
This has been awesome. I do have to wrap it up just because I have to go to CrossFit soon, which is funny. But yeah, so obviously production team, this is a sidebar. But yeah, so unfortunately, if we could wrap it up, we could definitely do round 2 sometime.
For sure. We're going to do round 2 because there's so many things we could nerd out on.
Yeah, man.
All right, Brad. I got to get you to your CrossFit, so we got to wrap this. We got to wrap this up. Make sure you're not late for class. Investing in your fit rich life. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, just because I think you're as in love with reading and personal development as me, is what are some of your top rated books or most recommended, or if people are like, hey, I'm looking to transform my life, in whether it be fitness or finances or mindset or what are a few of your favorites?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm probably gonna kick myself for missing something, but we'll do it on round 2 for sure. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like we've both talked about, Tim Ferriss fan. So, I mean, I've devoured every Tim Ferriss book. I think for me, it's just like mindset. While the 4-Hour Work Week was written, I guess 10 plus years ago, probably closer to 15 years ago at this point, and the exact examples aren't fully applicable and et cetera, et cetera. I think it's a great mindset for just thinking differently. And I think that's what I've tried to do throughout my whole adult life, is just think a little bit differently and just kind of like see the world as it is and just try to, how can I win? How can I optimize? So I think starting from 4-Hour Work Week to 4-Hour Body, which, has a lot of these principles, which even though he wrote that forever ago, it still holds up. I think, on the money side, I actually like to skew more towards like I guess not the nuts and bolts, because I think that once you've got your money kind of set up on autopilot, and this is not to sound flippant, but like once you have your money set up on autopilot, it's actually pretty easy. Like you don't have to think about it. In fact, not only do you not have to think about it, you don't want to think about it, because anytime you let your brain get in the way, you're almost invariably going to screw up your financial life. So like keep your brain out of it as much as humanly possible. But I've read a couple really great books just on the mindset of money recently. So The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is like an absolute slam dunk. I think every human should read that. There's a book by a guy named William Green called Richer, Wiser, Happier, which looks at, yeah, Justin, you'd like this one. It looks at some of like the most successful investors in the world. And again, going back to what we said about index funds, this does not negate that. In fact, it might prove it even more true, which is many of these investors follow the principles of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Yeah. And that's what's beautiful about this book is these are people who have been successful at life, not just, hey, I won the game of finance and I work for a hedge fund. Like that's not what I'm optimizing for. So Richer, Wiser, Happier is a phenomenal one. There are some productivity, like, I hate that word, but like Atomic Habits by James Clear is
such a good book.
Right, like an absolute slam dunk. One of a buddy of mine and former guest, he wrote a book called, his name is John Zeratsky. He wrote a book with a guy named Jake Knapp. They're both former Google employees, called Make Time, which is really good. And it's kind of along the lines of like, well, it's a little more tactical, but I think of it in terms of like maybe The One Thing or Essentialism, which are another two books that I really just have always loved. And it's just like, well, I don't, unfortunately, like it's hard to live that life every day. It's just like, I kind of check back in with them in terms of like, how can I recenter myself? So yeah, I mean, that's a lot of them. I mentioned Influence by Cialdini before. I think like a lot of the social psychology stuff is just fascinating. Like our like human OS and like how weird we are basically. Like, you know, I find it interesting just to like learn more about what makes us tick really as human beings and like the quirks of humanity, if you will. So, you know, like a Malcolm Gladwell type thing. So yeah, I mean, I've probably named more books than I would have guessed there, Justin, but no, that's
those
kind
are
of a
all
high level.
Awesome. I haven't read all of them, but I've read a number of them, which is perfect. So thank you.
Nice.
Any last words of wisdom or thoughts that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I would say, and I think this is kind of a rehash of stuff we talked about before, but life is about taking action. And it's plain and simple. Your life is not going to get better just listening to this podcast or any other podcast. It's just not. You gotta get up off the couch and you have to take action. And they don't have to be big monumental things. It doesn't have to be moving to Richmond, Virginia from a high cost of living area. Like that's not applicable. It's how can I start snowballing this so things work for me? How can I be aware, right? Like we talked about with health, but it's with every aspect of your life. It's how are these relationships? How is this working for me? Like, do I feel worse around this person or do I feel better? Like, just think about little things, right? Like another book actually that I wanted to mention was called A Complaint-Free World by Will Bowen, which is one of the best books ever written. But I promise, don't read it if you. It's almost like once you've seen The Matrix, it's hard to unsee it. Like how much of like people's interactions are just like slight negativity or complaining, and it's a really marvelous book, and it'll reshape and rechange like how you interact and you go through life. But that was what I was saying about the kind of last words there is, yeah, I mean, it's just constantly be looking for how can I make my life better in every way. And that's why I love what you're doing, because it's really like how I think about every aspect of my life. It's living that fit, rich life. And how can I make that broader across every aspect? And I know yours is like, how can I think about just having a better life and one tiny little action at a time? And
Yep.
I think that that's a great starting place.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this off recording, but that's the whole reason it's Alchemize Life, is because alchemize is the verb form of alchemy. So it's like, how can you alchemize each little area of your life, or each, big area of your life? And I love what you said. It's like, I guess Brad is asking the audience, like, what is one thing you can do this week that you learned from this podcast interview, right? So, and it doesn't have to be big. You could literally go look into Zone 2 training or whatever.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, everybody, Brad's show, Choose FI, that he, up until very recently did with Jonathan, is incredible resource, all things, personal development, financial independence, and so much more. So if you're trying to find, your version of FI, like how this could actually work in your life, check out the podcast. There is a template there for you to find your financial independence in a way that is fun and realistic. And it's just an incredible show. Brad, best place to find you online if people want to connect with you?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think the easiest way, I'm not like huge into social media. So actually the easiest way is to get on my email newsletter list. So,
perfect.
Well, a lot of people like that's a little scammy for a lot of people. This is actually a very personal thing. So for me, I send out an email to our community every Tuesday. So
Great.
Go to choosefi.com/subscribe and you will get a handwritten email from me with couple little things almost similar to Tim Ferriss's 5 Bullet Friday, but not derivative of that, but like a couple of things that I've just found that I think are really interesting. And then I highlight 6 or 7 actions that people have taken from our community who wrote back to me from the prior week's email, because that's the part where you can connect. Is if you hit reply to that email, it comes to me, and no joke, I read every single one of those emails. So regardless of whether it's 10, 50, or 500, and it's usually a lot, I'm reading every single one of those emails. So, and that's the cool thing, is I get so much energy from seeing the action people take, and the rest of the community does as well. So it's this perfect, like, virtuous cycle or circle, whatever, and like it's just wonderful. So yeah, choosefi.com/subscribe.
Awesome. Brad, thank you so much for the role that you and Jonathan played in my life, and B, for coming on the show, sharing your insight, your wisdom. I got to say, your actionable insight, your wisdom, your journey, your FI journey, your entrepreneurial journey. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'll definitely invite you back so we can nerd out on fitness and money again.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Well, thank you for the kind words. And yeah, this is really a lot of fun, Justin.
Thanks for tuning in. And remember, literally everything can be used as an opportunity to learn, to heal, to grow, and to transform. So whatever is going on in your life, choose to consciously and proactively harness that energy and use it to alchemize your life to the next level. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or on your favorite social media, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. As always, you can find me at Justin David Carl on Instagram and all the socials, as well as at alchemizelife.com on the web. Until the next time, sending you lots of energy and plenty of dragon magic.